So in our last video, we created an Angular single-page application that's editing a SQL database using Breeze and WebAPI in the middle. Now I want to take a look at publishing that to the cloud. So in order to put that in the cloud, let's kind of look at this from the back forward. First thing we're going to want to do is to make a SQL database. I'm going to name it SPJF to do SQL. Let's see what we have for maybe a resource group. A blank database is fine. We do need to give it a SQL Server instance name, SA for sysadmin. We need a password. Well, let's use our security header we were using earlier. Pick out a location, Central US, yeah, okay. Pricing tier, we'll go for the basic standard one, and we will hit create. That's going to make a SQL database for us in the cloud. Now, from over here in SQL Studio, we can put in the server name, admin username, password. We're going to try to connect. So let's go ahead and look at our data in our local SQL database. Over here we have the to-do table, which we can select. There it is. And what we're going to do is publish this to the cloud. So if you right-click, there's a menu for Azure SQL and a little bit of a wizard. We want to provide a server connection and our SA credentials. It's going to use a backpack file, which is this new portable SQL database format. So what we're really doing is exporting our local data to Backpack and then importing the Backpack to SQL Azure. There's a wizard to confirm settings, and then the copy process will begin. Okay, the import completed successfully. So if we close the wizard and refresh the database tree, we now see to-do list in the cloud with one table listed. We can issue a select statement. And there's our results. Same data as we have on-prem. Excellent. So the first step was to put the database in the cloud. The next step is to publish our API as an Azure website. So for that, we're going to right-click, publish, pick Azure App Service. And here we fill out the wizard with the name of the app plan, a resource group, and hit create. So here we see a web deploy prompt with destination credentials for doing the publish. And here we do want to do a string replacement. So the connection string we're going to want to change. We want to adjust that to match our cloud Azure SQL. So here we pick out our connection to the cloud with server name, username, password, database name, test the connection, looks good, and we can go ahead and publish. So now our application's been successfully published. If we add Breeze to do API metadata to the suffix, we're going to come back with a null response. But that's okay. We expected that because we need to have the security header. So if we go check out Fiddler, and we go to the composer, put in our URL, add to-do key, paste in our security header, and try it that way, we might get a different response. So here, we get back a full JSON response. Excellent. If we change metadata to the name of a table, replace that with to-do, execute, come over here, F8, we can see all of our data. In fact, if we wanted to test it a little bit further, we can go edit the rows in SQL Studio, add a new record, and make sure it shows up. So here we added one more row in the cloud, which we can test with a select statement. Excellent, there it is. And then we come over here to Fiddler, Composer, Execute, inspect the response. There's Cloud Test. So wonderful. Now we know that this cloud address is coming back with data. We have our security header, and we are successfully running with both cloud and with both SQL Azure and the Web API middle tier. So the only last part would be to add the Angular SPA front end. So with our Angular SPA, we have the local project. What we're going to do is go ahead and clone that and create a cloud copy and make a few minor adjustments, because we don't need to deploy all of the same things. So we'll go ahead and say open folder. Make a cloud copy. Excellent. Open up VS Code. And here we have a lot of the same sort of things, but we're going to adjust this slightly. Site assets is a SharePoint library we can use for hosting. Going to do a few replaces. Very nice. Site assets JS. Okay, cool. Now with that done, we're going to upload this to our site and see what it looks like. Okay, so here I've uploaded the node module items, Angular, Breeze Client, jQuery, Q, and Toaster, along with the applications to do HTML and also JavaScript files. So let's go edit the HTML. There's a few // site assets. That has to do with the pathing, because this is actually going to load under site pages. So we need to go up one level to the root and then back down to site assets to get everything to load correctly. Over here on the JS file, we needed to point at our cloud endpoint for the entity manager. Previously, this was a localhost URL. We're not interested in localhost. We're trying to get published to the cloud. So we just want to make sure this URL points at the Breeze endpoint in the cloud, that our HTML file has the correct relative path to load all of its various site assets. And then finally, we have the homepage in edit mode, and we point the content editor at the HTML file and hit save. Now at that point, you can see it actually loading and populating the screen, just ever so subtle when the JSON data comes through. And here I could, I don't know, maybe delete a couple items and put in new idea, add, save, and then come over here to SQL Studio, refresh our cloud database. We have new idea. That's really cool. So we're actually editing our SQL data in the cloud, and we're using effectively a web part on the SharePoint homepage to do that. So we've seen both the local Angular SPA and the cloud Angular SPA. We have seen local SQL storage and cloud SQL Azure storage, along with a local Web API and a cloud Web API. So the three components, SQL in the back, Web API in the middle, and Angular SPA on the front. You can do that stack of three things, both local or in the cloud. It works just the same. We designed our API with cores in mind. So we have the cross-origin resource sharing to make this API call successful when it reaches over here to azurewebsites.net, even though our SharePoint site is hosted elsewhere. And in the end, we really just made a SharePoint web part that's editing a SQL database, which is a pretty cool thing to do with no server-side code on the Office 365 side. All of the code is over in Azure, and the magic is really happening here in JavaScript, where we can make changes for look and feel, application logic, validation, whatever we need. And really that Breeze endpoint will rarely change. The only time to change that would be security or a different schema. But if your SQL schema for storage remains the same, then you'll spend most of your time editing the JavaScript files up front. So thank you for watching, and hope you found it helpful.